Hello. To understand the Earth's different climates, you must first understand that because of the Earth's shape and because of its position relative to the sun, it does not receive equal light from the sun. There is more intense light along the equator, which is an imaginary line around the middle of the Earth. And it receives less light at the poles, the North and South Pole. The light comes in more at an angle. So because of this uneven heating and light from the sun, the Earth is divided into different climate regions. Moving up from the equator, you'll notice that the Earth has imaginary lines here on the globe that are called latitude lines. And depending on where that line is, moving up from the equator to the North Pole, we get different climate zones or different climate regions. So let's take a look at the different climates of the world. As you might expect, with sunlight hitting the equator more directly and the heat and light hitting the Earth more directly, we have a warm zone in the middle of the Earth called the tropical zone. Have you heard the word tropical before? Tropical refers to a climate that is usually very warm, as you might expect, and also very humid and wet. In the tropical climate, much rainfall is expected. Moving up from that, we've got a zone where around the world, some of our largest deserts are. Moving up from the tropical zone, depending on where the land is in relationship to the ocean, we have desert zones or arid climate. Arid or desert climates are very dry, but not always hot. Deserts receive very little rainfall. The largest desert in the world, the Great Sahara Desert in northern Africa, is in this zone called the desert or arid zones. In other places around the world, because of where it is in relationship to the ocean, there may be more moisture in this zone. So we've got so far a tropical climate, desert climate. Now we move up to the climate that we live in. Moving up in latitude, we get to the temperate climate. Much of the United States is in the temperate climate, where we have 4 seasons with warm summers and cold winters. In some places, especially in the continental United States, these temperature differences can be very great between summer and winter. So summers can be very warm, even hot, and winters can be very, very cold in this climate called the temperate. Within this temperate climate, there are other climates too. There's one around the Mediterranean Ocean, or Mediterranean Sea rather, called the Mediterranean climate. And that climate is known, because of the moderating effects of the Mediterranean Sea, it's known to be a bit more mild than the normal temperate climate. So other books and resources may call some of these climates by different names, or even have more climates. We are focusing on these 4 main climate types. The Mediterranean climate actually also exists along the coast of California because of the effects of the Pacific Ocean. So moving up from the temperate climate, we get to one that you've probably heard of before. It's called the polar climate. Around the poles of the Earth, both North and South Pole, we have a climate that, as you would expect, it's very cold. It receives indirect sunlight, and because of the angle of the light where the sunlight hits it, there are months sometimes where there's little or no light. So as you'd expect, this climate is cold and also quite dry. There are places where there's permanent ice and even frozen ground called permafrost all year long. So now you know about some of the climates around the world. There's one more thing we have to learn about before we play the climate game. The thing about climates that's kind of cool is different plants and animals have adapted and have certain traits to live in certain climates. We call these zones of life within the climates biomes. Biomes. So if you think about biomes within these climates, you'll think about certain life forms like the snowy owl that's specially adapted to live in a certain climate. I won't tell you which one because you may want to use it for the climate game. What's the climate game, you might ask? Who said that? Here it is. Now here's your assignment. You are going to act out you being in a certain climate of the world. And us teachers are going to look at your student responses and guess what climate you're in. You may not mention the name of the climate while you're acting out being in that climate. You may mention plants or animals that you see. Do a little research and find out what lives in a tropical climate, a desert climate, or a temperate or polar climate. You may also mention the conditions. As a matter of fact, you must mention at least 3 different clues that would tell us you're in that climate. Something about temperature, perhaps, something about rainfall, perhaps a plant or animal that would live in a biome within that climate. This will be so much fun. What a great assignment. You get to act out in front of your teachers and we will guess what climate you're in. It's the climate game. Good luck. I can't wait to see what you're going to do.